Yo, Doobies and Movies, episode 3. Thanks everyone for all the love so far. This one is a reaction to Mandalorian premiere. It was gonna come out yesterday, but Joel was Joel got us to delay it so he could take part. And as you can see, he hasn't taken part. So here it is on the Sunday. But my good mate Steve and Star Wars expert is gonna talk us through a lot of the episode. But yeah, I thought it was a great start, great premiere. One of my favorite episodes, I think, of the whole show actually. But you go ahead, tell me what you thought.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was as solid as a start you can get to a season. I think, and I'd agree. It's definitely one of the top episodes, as in the whole show so far. I'd say like the way it was played out, the fact it picked up right from where it left off. It had the nice little kind of initial scene of Grief Karga and Cara Dune right at the start, where like he's leaving them and going off to try and find Mandalorians and shit with the kid. It literally leaves off from that point and it gets straight off into it. And I thought that it was just it didn't like mess about or anything. It didn't like have like one episode where it was a bit quieter. It had like a nice little intro, then it got straight into a bit of action. And the way they introduced the kind of like the plot of that show, where it was kind of like almost like a western, where they went to Tatooine, went to this
definitely.
kind of, it was just so good. And then they obviously had these kind of obviously very western things, like they had the marshal, and they had the kind of standoffs with Tusken Raiders and the bandits, and they also had
they got Timothy Oliphant in to play the
yeah
whatever his name was,
yeah
and he's like always playing like southern droll kind of actors, like western kind of stuff.
exactly. It was
Yeah,
very very western that episode, and it was also what I really liked the so obviously there's some really really good throwbacks to the films in that episode. I think more than in any of the other episodes that they've done so
yeah,
far.
that felt like a lot of fan service, like the armor and the
Yeah, like immediately you see the Marshal and you expect to see like another Mandalorian, and rather than another Mandalorian, you see him wearing
I like
Boba
that.
Fett's armor. And no, I thought that was amazing. I thought that was a really, really sick thing, because that was one thing that was never confirmed from the films, was that what happened to Boba Fett after he was swallowed by the Sarlacc. And then they go into this kind of idea of where it's not just Boba Fett's armor as well. It's heavily damaged, and it's kind of not broken, but it's almost kind of just kind of at that point where it's almost unrecognizable, where it's lost all the paint and it's so kind of like damaged and kind of rough looking, and yet it's still Boba Fett's armor. It's still like distinctive enough to identify it straight away, and it's being worn by a random guy who's not only got the jetpack and the rocket launcher on the back, but he's also got like the full aerial thing on the helmet and everything. So the armor is fully like up and running, and it was just it really good detail.
And it kept to the theme of the importance of the armor, because the whole thing is that the Mandalorian wants it back because obviously of what it means.
Yeah.
Kind of like, he doesn't even show his face because he's the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
He's always in the armor. It means everything to him. So they kept that theme going, which I thought worked. And they end up becoming friends. And I feel that's when they capture the essence of Star Wars. That's when it is, because it's at the end of the day, it's a happy thing. As much as bad stuff happen and there's the dark side, there's also the light. And the fact that they actually become mates, they could have easily fought. They could have played that 100 ways, but they become mates at the end, and they're kind of like, oh, maybe one day we're gonna have a little fight together again, and they probably will, because they got a big actor, and I quite like the guy. I forgot his name, Cobb or something.
I can't remember the marshal's name either, but like what I really liked though was that kind of little like scene of where he meets the marshal, and there's that moment where the Mando is literally just looking at him, and then the marshal takes the helmet off, and he's almost like taken back, and he's just like, oh shit, he's taking his helmet off. And he's just like, you kind of know as soon as he takes the helmet off, this guy isn't a Mandalorian.
That's what I mean, because obviously the whole season you set up and understand how important that the armor is.
Yeah.
And I also liked they brought back which I think Mandalorian has in a couple episodes. But they brought back that kind of almost political, for lack of a better word, kind of thing with the two kind of communities that don't trust each other and don't want to like work together, and then but by working together they end up killing the monster. Like, it's simple stuff, but it's like it's nice stuff, like, and it's
Yeah, and it's also one of the key things about that is that you get the villagers working with Tuskens, which is like in Star Wars like filmography, you've never ever gotten that close to Tuskens. You've never like gotten that good of a look at them. You've never seen people having full conversations with them. You've never had anything like that. It's always been the Tusken Raiders just attacking people or trying to scare people in the desert. You've never even seen a human or anyone else even just like communicate.
It humanizes them, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And the one of the other really, really, really sick things about it was there was this. Do you remember when they're going through that scene where it's the Marshal and Mando are tracking it, and they go into that big like rock kind of alleyway or chasm, and then the Tusken sounds and they come out. That alleyway, that chasm, is the same set that was used in A New Hope, that was found when R2-D2 and C-3PO are in the desert, and Jawas come out of the thing. Yeah, it's literally the same set.
This is why we get you on the show.
Yeah, well, it's just these little kind of things, because it looks exactly the same. The rock formations look exactly the same, and it's this really nice kind of throwback to that scene where Jawas pop out and they took R2-D2, but this time Tuskens pop out and they come to help Mando and all that. And it's this nice little kind of contrast between the two. And then you've got this, I don't know if you noticed, but you know the Marshal has that bike he's got?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know where that bike originates from?
Go on, tell me.
From the first film, Anakin Skywalker uses the pod racer in Tatooine.
Damn.
Pod racer thing from the start is literally that. If you look at it, it's one of the front engines of the pod racer, because it has the three little yellow fat things at the front. So it's a really sick little kind of throwback to the first film that they've well, I say first film, first episode of the film, not first actual Star Wars film, but it's from episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and it's a sick little throwback from something Anakin Skywalker's done. So it's a really, really sick kind of use of stuff that has obviously been left around as trash in the desert on Tatooine, that the Marshal just come across and utilised it as a bike.
That's sick. I mean, ooh, that got loud. Is it coming out of me?
Oh, no, that's just your voice. I thought that was I heard like a crash behind me. I thought it was coming from you.
Yeah. Well, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I think the credit at that point goes to Jon Favreau, because obviously he's written the whole show, but he didn't direct a single episode in season 1, which I found weird, because obviously he's a big director. Obviously, having done Iron Man and stuff like that, he knows these things. He knows fan service, like he knows how to put in these little things. So I think he appreciates those moments, and he actually did it quite tastefully, I think, throughout the whole film. Like, these things I didn't even notice them, rather than putting them in your face. And the plot itself was quite tight throughout the whole thing, and it had a lot of nice human touches. Also, what's it? Princess Carolyn from BoJack was in it again. She was the woman that gives Mandalorian his what is it? His bike. It's just nice to hear that voice always, because BoJack's always got good vibes.
There are also there are like a couple other things with Boba Fett as well. So with, they have that. So actually, let's just go to the crate dragon, actually, because that kind of leads on to it, right? So the main plot of the show, or at least of that episode, was to deal with the massive crate dragon that was like plaguing that town and eating cattle and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
The really sick throwback to that is that's another throwback to another film, which is A New Hope, which in New Hope, they have that scene where it's pretty much right at the start of the film, actually. It's where Leia's ship gets attacked by Darth Vader. He invades it, and C-3PO and R2-D2 get ejected into an escape pod onto Tatooine. And when they're walking through the desert, there's this scene where they walk past this massive skeleton of a crate dragon. And it shows how big it is just by its skeleton. And then you see in The Mandalorian how fucking massive they are.
That's sick.
When they're like fully grown and alive. So you get this really sick kind of idea of like what those creatures would have been like if C-3PO and R2-D2 had encountered them in New Hope. And then there's also in the cave in which it sleeps is it's like an abandoned Sarlacc pit, which is what swallowed up Boba Fett in the Return of the Jedi. And if there's an abandoned Sarlacc pit, you kind of get this feeling there's going to be like I don't know, just like the Sarlacc has been destroyed and therefore it's been replaced by the Krayt Dragon in the cave. And if it's been destroyed, you therefore believe that maybe Boba Fett survived. And then you get to the end of the episode and you see that Boba Fett did survive.
Yeah.
Which I think was just incredible because that's something that hasn't been approached or even touched on in the Star Wars series. Everyone just kind of assumed Boba Fett was dead. But you now see that he's now kind of doing what Obi-Wan did, which is living in kind of isolation by himself on Tatooine in the deserts and just kind of living life done with the whole bounty hunter shit.
Do you think we're going to see him then?
I think I would like to say we'd see him, but the thing is, with that ending scene where he's watching over the Mando on the bike, leaving with his armor, and he doesn't do anything, I personally think that either that he's just done with everything and he's had that life and he's kind of over and done with it, and because he was the top bounty hunter in the whole of the galaxy, like his father was, like Jango Fett, and then Jango died, he took up that mantle, and then he supposedly died or became, very close to dying. And maybe he's just got to that point where he just doesn't really want to do it anymore. Like he's had the life, he's done that all the way. And the thing is, if you don't have the Mandalorian armor and you've got a reputation like that, and you're supposed to be the best bounty hunter in the world or in the galaxy even, you kind of put a target on your back. If you haven't got the Mandalorian armor, you're not going to be able to take, so many shots and shit. So he may just kind of be done with that life. I don't know.
Well, I just saw on the interwebs that the guy who played Jango Fett is the one that played him at the end.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Like it was the actual guy who played Jango Fett, and it would have been the guy who played Boba Fett because Boba Fett was a clone of Jango Fett.
Yeah. So that's all quite well done.
Yeah. No, I
got to give it up to Jon Favreau.
No, he really did research for that episode. It wasn't like as if he introduced some new stuff. All that stuff that was in there was already well established, like Star Wars lore. Like none of that was anything new, like they chucked in like the new films or anything like that. It was nothing incredibly outlandish or anything like that. All the aliens that were in there, all of the creatures that were in there, and all of the kind of references to even like they had that scene where they were talking about they shot back to when the marshal was like before he was the marshal of the town, and they had that scene where they saw the Death Star explode.
Yeah, that was sick.
That was sick, and the bit they used, the hologram, the bit of the Death Star exploding was the exact thing of the Death Star exploding in the film because it blew up in the exact same way. So they've really kind of gone back and taken loads and loads of little niche bits of the films and chucked them in and made it this really nice, comprehensive, linked universe to it.
No, that was sick because I enjoy it when they try or they show what like the normal people, for lack of a better term, how they would react.
Yeah.
To these big situations, and like because it gets a bit deeper into, because the original trilogy, or at least even original 6 films, are all quite political.
Yeah.
And so just even if it's in small doses, because I don't think Mandalorian should be like that. I think Mandalorian should be like a Western.
Yeah, Mandalorian isn't really political.
No, but those small doses of seeing how little communities and societies work within the galaxy does actually add this kind of extra stroke to the whole universe, because Star Wars is about all the big people, the important people, the counselors and the senators and the Jedi and the emperors, but not about the everyday person who's affected by these systems and whatever's in place. And it's kind of like in Game of Thrones, whenever you'd see the lowborn families, milking their cows and stuff, like, you know what I mean? It gives you the glimpse of what people were actually dealing with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's nice and it's tasteful, and if they continue this way, my only concern is, which I don't think will be a concern throughout the season, is just them moving the plot forward, because it's a show that can definitely spend a lot of time on solo adventures. It has unlimited potential for solo adventures, but you do want to see them get into the heart of Baby Yoda and what he's all about.
Yeah, and the thing is with this plot as well, it's not even just like even though it is kind of more drawn back from the politics and that, it's still just so vitally important to the whole story of Star Wars, because Baby Yoda is like, their species is incredibly rare. Like the only two that are known of in the whole of the Star Wars film universe, at least, is Yoda and Yaddle. And Yaddle was in like the Phantom Menace, and disappeared after that from Clone Wars onwards. And those are the only two of that species that you've ever seen. So seeing Baby Yoda kind of come into it, the more, even if it's a really slow, say it takes like, I don't know, series 4.
I didn't know about this Yaddle bloke.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? And no one knows it. Not many people know about Yaddle, because Yaddle was like she wasn't like a really important part of the plot. She was just one. She.
I called her a bloke.
But like, you got Yoda and Yaddle. It's like yin and yang.
Okay,
but
so
like
Yaddle, I had no idea about Yaddle.
But Yaddle was essentially like in Phantom Menace, and she was one of the high on the Jedi Council.
Is she what? She's in I've seen Phantom Menace so many times.
Yeah, if there's like scene in the Phantom Menace where they go to the Jedi Council, you'll see a female Yoda.
Alright.
And that's like the only thing.
I'll take your word for it.
After that, you don't really see much of it. But to be fair, I was going to ask, did you ever finish watching Clone Wars?
No.
Oh, you need.
I will get back to it at some point.
You need to get on that, because I like to hope that at some point, maybe in this, that there'll be some characters that come forth, that there is some clarity shown on them through the Clone Wars, because one entity that is still, well, actually, no, it won't still be around. Oh, no, this is after the Empire. I was going to say, there's one entity that could come and pop up, like, really, really quickly in between kind of this era. But no, that was actually during the Empire, so it can't be. But what I really want to see is, in this episode, is to see Moff Gideon kind of appear, and you can kind of get more clarity on him.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah.
He's popped up now twice in Doobies and movies, because obviously he was in The Boys.
Yeah.
And 2 roles so far where you don't really know yet what he's saying. I mean, in The Boys, like, his character seems also like a bit two-dimensional, whereas in the one episode of Mandalorian, he was really like, he made an impact.
Yeah. Well, he's the overarching villain of the entire series. So he's the guy who's kind of commanding the parts of the Empire that are still running, that haven't quite dissolved. And there are definitely going to be references to some battles that are going to be involved with the remainders of the Empire and the rebels. And I'm hoping that Moff Gideon is kind of going to be, you're going to kind of see some real hefty Imperial forces at some point from Moff Gideon, I'm hoping. Because he's got access to them, and considering that he's got a lightsaber as well, Mandalorians traditionally, their armor and their fighting tactics are like the number one, like against like Jedi and Sith. The way they fight and whatnot, they've always been kind of like really, really good at countering Jedis. So it'd be really sick to see a Mandalorian up against Moff Gideon, even though he may not have force abilities in that, but he has a lightsaber.
Yeah, I mean, my head's going crazy. Been trying to light this fucking thing, and the light is not very good. But no, completely. It was sick just to see someone with a lightsaber in the show as well. And I guess it is just building up to a sick fight between them. Because it would be actually sick to see the depth of was it Gideon Moff or Moff Gideon?
Moff Gideon.
Moff Gideon. See the depth of his ability, really, and also completely his motivation, because it'd be good for them to have an actually really good villain, because obviously the new films are so shit, and I feel like they haven't come up with a good villain in a while.
No, I think
So,
the annoying thing with the films is they try to kind of continue this light side versus dark side thing, and whilst that does work, they didn't really develop a new villain. They created new characters, but the villain stayed the same throughout the entirety of the thing. There was still Palpatine behind the doors of everything. He was still the one trying to solve everything. But yeah.
yeah. No, it is true, and it does have potential to work, because obviously they've got a good actor, and the finale was one of the best episodes, probably the best episode of Mandalorian, the finale of season 1,
Yeah.
where he was introduced and they had the showdown. But yeah, like a fully fledged fight is obviously on the cards. There's obviously more characters as well because they killed a couple of the supporting characters in season 1. His little
Yeah.
mate. The guy Carl Weathers died. Carl Weathers died,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And didn't Werner Herzog die as well?
I can't remember who Werner Herzog is.
He was the one that gets him to get the baby in the first place, the like Germany one.
Oh yeah. No, he died. He died. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure nearly every character. Did the girl die?
Well, Cara Dune.
Yeah, the wrestling one.
Yeah, no. She in in that episode that just came out, there's like the first scene is of the guy who led the guild, Grief Karga, and her, Cara Dune. She's still alive. They're just not traveling together anymore.
Okay, well, yeah, she's probably gonna come back then at some point, but
Mm,
there's probably gonna be, I think, a few surprises, like the way Timothy Oliphant showed up. I think there's gonna be some famous people that we didn't know were coming throughout the
mm.
series, and they
Yeah,
haven't. I don't think they've announced all the directors yet for the season, so I think that will also be in um, one to look out for.
definitely. I have an idea of what the plot might be because if he's going to find more Mandalorians, I reckon he'll find some more Mandalorians and they'll kind of group up together and, go on this whole this is the way thing and try and find the kid, his home and all that. But Moff Gideon, the lightsaber he has is called the Dark Saber, and that's like a legendary Mandalorian weapon. It's like the lightsaber that's been in Mandalorian like culture for like thousands of years or something. And because of that, I reckon Moff Gideon will kind of show that he's got the saber to the Mando or something, and then all the Mandalorians are going to try and attack him and get it back. Because whoever holds that in Mandalorian culture is supposedly like is what's known as Mandalore or Mandalore the Great, which is like supposed to be like the leader of Mandalore, the like herald of the way and all this kind of stuff. So I reckon there's going to be some massive fight that comes out, and you might see some sick, like huge amounts of like Mandalorians all with jetpacks and blasters and all this kind of stuff at some point. I'm hoping that'll be like a couple series down the line, though. I don't think that'll be anytime soon.
Well, that's another thing to kind of wonder. How long do you think? I know, obviously, it's like the flagship show of Disney
Yeah,
Plus, but at some point, do they decide to make him
yeah,
a film? Do they
yeah.
go with the series for ages, or do they try and give it a proper ending?
I'd like to think they'd get like a good 4 to 5 seasons out of it. I'd say any more than 4 or 5 is probably too much because I mean, when considering the chapter like the series 1 had 8 chapters to it, it got quite a fair amount done in terms of like Mando's development with the kid and that. And then I reckon in series 2 there'll be more of that. Series 3, I'm hoping will be really, really action packed and there'll be loads of shit going on. Then maybe series 4 will be kind of like the penultimate series where everything kind of comes to a close, or maybe it's not even Mando gets a separate film. It could well be that another film gets made and Mandalorian is just a part of it.
Yeah, I think that's probably more likely, that he shows up in another kind of Star Wars film of some sort. I mean, to be honest, I can't say that I'm that invested in the whole thing, but in Mandalorian, because it's good, I'm gonna keep watching it as long as it's good. And so far, it is good. In fact, there's a lot of signs to say that it's gonna get better. So, because I wasn't blown away by season 1. It was good. and it was no more than good. But good was still quite sick because Star Wars had been so shit.
Yeah,
So good was still like all right then. And there was a
yeah,
couple of real standout episodes and moments, and it was
yeah.
cool to see Bill Burr show up, and it was cool to see Taika Waititi do the finale. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you made a really good point earlier. Was that it's a good point talking about how it's more kind of based around the underworld of Star Wars and bounty hunting and that kind of stuff, rather than the politics and the Senate and the Republic and the Empire and all this stuff. It's not politics based. It's literally a guy making money by doing jobs who's trying to just find his way with his creed of Mandalore or whatever. So it's a nice little kind of downplayed version of Star Wars, really.
Yeah, and he's isolated and alone, and it's quite touching how he bonds with the baby or whatever it is.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and it's just, to be honest, it's a really good way just to get more kind of actual film time of Mandalorians. You didn't really get that much. You only ever got Jango Fett or Boba Fett in the films, and in the series you saw a few things in the cartoons, but nothing massive. Nothing really stood out to you. All the Mandalorian stuff was either from games or from books.
yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't really know much, to be honest. I'm not that well read, but no, it is interesting and it is a cool idea, and I think they've done it well, and it's a good. I don't know. Obviously, as a Marvel fan, it's good to know that at Disney Plus you can see that the budget and getting big guys write and direct, and it bodes well for the MCU shows that we're anticipating.
Yeah, and I'd like to think it bodes well for hopefully like future Star Wars, either series or maybe films. I feel like the films might just continue to be very Disney orientated and try and be very much so.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see. I don't know. They
I hope.
might just rewrite the whole, like just start scratch with just a whole new way of doing it. Who knows? But
Yeah.
just a thing I thought I'd mention before we wrap it up. Shropshire Boy was saying, John Favreau, he did that film Cowboys and Aliens.
Yeah, it is a bit like that.
He was saying, yeah, he loves cowboys, and he was messaging me when he watched
Yeah.
it. So, like, I wanted him to come on the show and say it himself, but
He's on a wilderness walk.
yeah, he's in the wilderness. but yeah, he was saying that you can see that Favreau just is obsessed with cowboys and aliens because that kind of.
You definitely get that from the Mandalorian as well, because even like the soundtrack is very much so kind of. It's so unique, and it does give that Western kind of style, especially that he's got blaster pistols and he's kind of goes in showdowns with people and all that kind of stuff. So it is very Western.
And also that bit where the whatever that animal's called, that cute animal, just got eaten brutally.
Cute animal? What cute animal?
You know those big buffalo-looking things?
Oh, banthas.
Yeah, banthas. Yeah. When it just gets like totally gobbled up by that.
Yeah.
That was so.
There's also that bit where like they're first trying to lure the crate dragon out of the cave, and they leave the bantha out, and the Tusken literally runs, and it just eats the Tusken. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just
they end up blowing it up by attaching bombs to one of those things, right?
Yeah, so all the explosives are around the bantha, and Mando gets the thing to eat him and the bantha, and then he uses his shock thing to get the crate dragon to open its mouth.
I mean, it's brutal but effective.
Yeah, it worked, and the thing is, like their plan didn't work. Like the original one they went for just didn't work. So like that, you got to admire like that is the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Cuff wouldn't like it with his reaction to the whale in The Boys.
Yeah, no, that's true. Really. Cuff wouldn't rate it, but I mean, like it's still. I think it was still quite clever. I mean, it was more like the fact that they had, because not Boba Fett, Mandalorian even used that rifle that literally disintegrates people, and he used that on the crate dragon on the outside, and literally did nothing. So like, what else could they have done?
Yeah, no, I back it. It was sick. But yeah, no, I guess that's probably probably a good little summary and session of Doobies and movies.
Yeah,
I don't usually do the most smooth endings. I kind of just like abruptly end it or whatever. I might say like a thank you and a goodbye before I stop recording. So